Hi there, and welcome to this Ed webinar. I'm Adam, I'm one of the instructional designers here at Ed. And obviously today we're going to be looking at Ed's survey templates. So this is a new feature that we've just released. It's really exciting, it's really cool. I've been looking forward to it a lot. I've seen it coming through in development. So before we actually go into how Ed uses surveys and how we recommend you use surveys with your learning content, I'm just going to talk briefly about how it works or what the history behind it was. And really it was that a lot of people were coming to us and saying, oh, they wanted to get some insights from their learners, from their the people going through their content and their employees. They'd have to go through another platform, typically SurveyMonkey to deliver out surveys. And it's just another thing they have to set up and manage, and it's not too good. And when it's so closely related to learning, it makes sense for surveys to be included within the content as well, so you can get some nice proper feedback from your learners. So we completely agreed, and we decided to implement surveys instead, and hopefully help out with your concerns there about asking people all these surveys and stuff, and make it nice and easy, just like creating lessons, creating surveys in Ed, super easy, super quick. So in this presentation, we're just going to look at how Ed's survey templates work, then sort of some strategies for deploying surveys, at least incorporating them into your learning or using them to augment your learning. Of course, you will have your own business reasons for deploying surveys, and you'll have your reasons for using them. But this is just some guidance, if you want to use them to improve your learning or improve your skills, that sort of thing. Then we're going to look at some best practices, how to make good surveys, that sort of thing. And then the other uses, creative uses for the Freetext survey template, which is probably the best addition of this whole survey thing, in my opinion anyway, as a content author. So just to give a quick overview of how Ed templates work, for those of you who aren't super familiar with the platform. Basically in Ed, learners progress through slides of a lesson to complete the lesson. And once they've reached the end of the last slide of the lesson, that's it, they've completed the lesson. So each slide of a lesson can do different things based on the template you apply to it. And that can mean, like, at the start of a lesson, you can apply a video template to a slide. And that will mean that a learner goes through and watches the video. There's a text template afterwards, or some text. And then we go on and we use some advanced interactive reinforcement templates with the basic stuff like multiple choice questions, but then we can do more advanced things like connecting up concepts, simulating customer conversation scenarios, applying games, that sort of thing. And what we also have now, in addition to these knowledge transfer templates and interactive reinforcement templates, is the survey templates. So applied in exactly the same way as standard Ed templates. You go through when you're creating your lesson, you get to a slide and you say, I would like to apply a survey template to this slide. So if you know how to create Ed lessons, then you know how to create Ed surveys. And the good thing about the use of the survey templates is that they can be incorporated into standard Ed lessons as well. So the first thing we have here is the slider survey template, letting you ask number-based questions, multiple choice, and of course the Freetext survey template. I'll just go through the uses of some of these in detail. So the slider template is great for asking sort of like a scale type questions. So these are the kind of questions where you say, okay, for example here, on a scale of -5 to 5, how confident are you in your ability to sell, that sort of thing. So you can really quantify learners' confidence, you can quantify learners' opinions, that sort of thing, and they can self-judge and say, okay, it's a 4 out of 5, my confidence. So that sort of thing is great for you to have that quantitative analysis of learners' opinions. Similarly, you can ask number-based evaluations, not necessarily like at scale, saying stuff like, what percentage quality increase can you see here? How many more sales per day do you think you can get using this strategy? So it's a really nice way to assess learners' opinions of your concepts, and you can use the slider template to get those number-based responses. So similarly, we have the multiple choice template. So this is great, of course, for that kind of self-evaluation. So similarly, just like where we were quantifying in the slider template using those Likert scales, we can also just get a quick yes or no answer. Does the learner feel confident in their knowledge? And then you can go through and say, okay, 70% of my learners were confident on health and safety, but only 40% felt confident on customer relations. So you can use this to kind of gauge, even per user group. You can drill down and see, okay, so this user group answered this way. My team in North America don't feel too confident in their customer service skills, but in another market, they're more confident. So you can say, okay, this market needs to be taught on that sort of thing, for example. So you can really get a nice gauge for your learners' own appraisal of their skills using this template. And also you can go in, again, you can say, okay, coming from the perspective as an instructional designer, you can say, okay, learners, what did you think could be improved in this? Because the thing about ed courses is that it's so quick and easy to make changes. It's not like legacy e-learning where you would have to, you spend months and months making one course, and then any updates, we have to call the developer again and say, oh, we need this changed and everything. With ed courses, ed lessons, you just go on the LMS, type into the template. There's no dev knowledge required, no coding. It's all just up there for you. So any responses you get, it's really easy to action upon them. And that's what makes surveys in ed so valuable and so useful, because you can, if you see people aren't too keen on the policies section of your learning, it's not like you can go, oh, you have to go, oh, we'll do better next time. You can actually say, okay, we're going to improve this, so the next person that goes through this course, they're not going to face the same issues. So it's really useful to get that quantitative understanding of what your learners think of your content. So similarly, the Freetext survey template, again, it can be used to get that long form answer from your learners. And it can be used, again, if you would like to give learners a more open field to respond to questions. If you don't want to quantify the content, if you want to get some nice qualitative information about what your learners think or any information they want to give you, they can do that with this Freetext template. And we'll talk about creative uses of it later, because this is our first template that can allow an open response. It's our first open question in ed, and it's very, very useful. And something you can also do there is dictate a minimum response length, the number of characters they have to fill out before they can submit their response. So if you do want to force that nice quality response, say you're giving out these Freetext templates to your the people who are reviewing your course before you go out, and you don't want them to just say, yep, it's good, you want to get some actual quality feedback, then you say, oh, it's got to be 30, 50 characters long. So they do have to put some thought into their response. But be careful with that. We're still creating micro lessons, and if you put in something like 100 characters, poor people are gonna feel a bit frustrated when they're filling it out, I guess. So use it with caution, but it is there if you want to use it. So all information about surveys are collated back onto the Ed Analytics dashboard. So that's accessible in the LMS just by clicking on Analytics, going to Surveys. And what we have here is a per survey breakdown of everything that has been answered by your learners. So it's a nice dashboard that gives you a top level understanding, saying, okay, 100% of my learners like this lesson, great. And you can go down and then see the average responses, so the number-based questions, and also you can see those responses to those Freetext survey templates. And the great thing is that each of these are exportable to a CSV, so you can incorporate this data into any analytics platform you have. You can compare different surveys and contrast responses. So all this data is completely available for you to action upon. And additionally, once you export, you can actually see per user who responded what. So for example, in this second example here, okay, most of our learners appear to have rated a lesson at 5 out of 10, but some of them have gone through and said it was only a 5 out of 5. Some have gone through and said it was only a 3 out of 5. So if we can go through, we can export that, we can see who responded with a 3 and follow them up and say, hey, I saw you weren't super keen on this lesson. Is there any suggestions you have to perfecting it? And working in collaboration, you can really make that fantastic high quality e-learning that your business needs. So we're going to look at some strategies for deploying surveys. Again, you probably have your own uses for surveys within your organization, but this is just some examples of how we recommend using surveys. So the first of all is just guiding that construction of courses. So surveys sent out to learners maybe a month or so before construction of a course plan. Again, because content is so rapid in ed, you don't have to send a survey out too far ahead to get a good response. But when you ask your learners far in advance, what they feel weak in, then you can really build a course based on their responses and make a custom course that's it responds to their needs. So for example, if you're looking at a course on leadership and you send out a survey saying, hey, how do you feel about your understanding of transformational leadership? How do you feel about your understanding of transactional leadership, et cetera, et cetera? Your learners can go through and you can identify patterns and see, okay, most people are confident with transactional leadership, but 60% of our learners rated only 2 to 3 on their understanding of transformational leadership. So perhaps in this course, we should really focus primarily on transformational, because that's where my team, my company is weakest, and then we can build on that. And similarly, you can use the qualitative responses of the Freetext template and just simply ask learners, hey, we're going to do a course on leadership. What do you want to learn about? And again, that custom learning, which is so easy to do in Ed because of how rapid it is to create lessons, is really valuable, and it's really something you can achieve using these survey templates. And it's great to do that ahead of time. Send them a push notification saying, hey, there's a survey, come and check it out in Ed, and then complete that survey and you can create those quality lessons. So similarly, you can do some post-course feedback, like we were talking about. We get those learners to provide responses saying what they think could be improved. And this is actually particularly useful when you're sending out your content for review. You've got 1,000 learners about to go through a course. You want to get 10 or so to just go through the content and give responses. So in this example, you would add a survey lesson to the end of the course, draft it before it goes out to the wider audience. But what this will do is give you a nice standardized response format, so that you're not collating emails from 10 different sources saying, oh, I think this should be this, I should think that should be changed to this. Everything's just collated in one place on your dashboard. Nice and simple. All the free text responses in one export. All the slider, you've got that quantified. Okay, I can see that instead of, again, having 10 different people saying, it was pretty good, someone saying, yeah, I thought it was great. You've got that quantified. Okay, I've got 4 5s, 3 4s, 2 3s. It's pretty good, for example. So those are our recommendations. Now we go on to some survey best practices. And the first of all, for those of you who are familiar with the theory behind creating good micro lessons, just like how you need to have a unique objective per slide of your lesson, the same thing applies when you're creating a survey. You need to have a unique objective for each survey template you use, because you're still spending some of your learners' time when you ask them a survey question, and it has to be value. The time they're spending in your lessons answering your surveys, it's time they're not spending doing their job. It's time they're not spending learning more things in Ed. It's very valuable, and if you're kind of just throwing out questions willy-nilly, then it's not to be useful to them. It's not going to be useful to you. It's not good data. It's using up their time, inefficient. So always have those objectives just lined up and saying, okay, I want to understand if a learner is confident in their understanding of content. Because obviously you can go through and construct test lessons in Ed, and you can say, okay, my learners, they know all about the map, but they know all its technical specifications. But to actually sell it well, they need to feel confident as well. If they feel confident when they're talking to a customer, the customer's going to think, okay, great, I'm in good hands here. But if they don't feel confident, even if they know everything, they're not going to sell so well. So it's something that I need to know. I need to understand that the learners feel confident in their concepts. So I'm putting in a survey template to ensure myself of that. Similarly, again, the good objective of just getting some guide for those future courses is a valuable use of the template, so it's okay to put it in there. And that's an important thing to have when you're creating your surveys. Similarly, you want to keep your target learner in mind. So at a very basic level, it's making sure that your learner can understand the question. You're going to be getting, if the learner doesn't understand what you're asking them, they're going to guess, they're probably put in the wrong answer because they don't actually know what you're talking about, and that's going to muddy your data. It's going to mean that you're going to have some corrupt answers that skew the results in a way that you don't want to. Again, you're spending your learner's time and you want a valuable response. So you need to make sure your learner will understand it, whether that being explaining clearly any acronyms that you use, or just trying not to be too verbose. Perhaps people don't understand all these big words that you're using. You never know. Just remember, keep your audience in mind. Similarly, you have to think about who's going to be responding to this template. So in an onboarding course, for an example, you might think that people at every level of the company are going to be answering this. You know, people who come and get onboarded in sales, from all the way to people who are upper management, or, you know, any course that different layers of the company are seeing. Do you want your surveys to be collated with all that audience? You know, is the responses from management about how they rate their sales skills going to be as relevant as people who are in sales? Probably not. They're going to have people rating low because they don't sell at all, to people rating really high because they sell all the time. So that's not going to be valuable data. So you can very easily separate who sees the survey using Ed's user groups feature. You say, okay, this survey goes to management, this survey goes to sales. And that way you can get good data coming in that truly represents the audience you're looking at. So keep in mind who's looking at your content. Okay, looking at question design, you know, avoid leading questions. Again, we're always going to be looking back to you're spending your learner's time, so you want to get some nice quality data from your responses. And it's very nice to get a lot of yeses when you're asking people, okay, is my lesson good? It makes you feel good. But if it's a leading question, if it's the one where the question kind of encourages your learner to answer one way or the other, then it's not valuable data and it's a bit of a waste of time. So what you want to do is just make sure that your question is nice and unbiased. It doesn't encourage them to lean either way in their response, and that way you get a real accurate representation of what your learner feels, rather than what your learner feels they should be responding to the question. So avoid those questions where you're saying, come on, you agree with me, don't you? This is a great lesson. Just try and keep it nice and neutral and biased. The final recommendation is to avoid double-barrel questions. So you can see in this example, we are asking the learner about their understanding of the products, Pandora's rings and Pandora's chains. So a salesperson who knows rings like the back of their hand, but knows nothing about chains, would feel confused about how to answer this. And again, they might say, well, okay, I'll give it a 4 because I'm good at rings, but the chains is dragging me down. And then you don't have an accurate representation of either. So if both of these pieces of information are important to know, then it's worth just splitting up that template into 2 different questions. Just saying, okay, what's your knowledge on rings? And then what's your knowledge on chains? And those double-barrel questions really can confuse your learners and produce bad data. So just keep in mind when you're writing your questions in a survey, if you ever put an and in, it's a bit of a warning sign. Obviously, you can use and in quality questions too, but just be on the lookout for those double-barrel questions because they can trip people up. So now we move on to the most exciting part of the presentation for me. Again, as a content designer, I was really pleased that we were going to be finally able to have learners type out responses to Ed questions in a lesson. We're just going to look at some creative uses for the Ed Freetext template. So the first one is to get your learner to identify some kind of steps that they're going to take. So obviously, a learner's gone through the content, we've given them that knowledge transfer and interactive reinforcement, which is still so valuable at getting your learner to understand the key concepts. Yeah, we've been educating them on this transformational leadership style. We introduced it to them, we corrected their understanding with those interactive templates, where we reinforced it with the game templates. And so they understand transformational leadership. They understand that the company wants them to be a transformational leader. But now we want them to go in and identify how they are going to take a step to becoming that. It's all well and good them knowing it, but I want them to be thinking about how they do it. And before now, what we typically would have done is said on the exit side of the lesson, okay, learner, now you need to go and think about how you are going to become a transformational leader. And you'd like to hope that most of them would have done it, but actually getting them to write it out and say, I am going to do this and I will do it today. It's a great way to making sure they think about it, write it down, and keep that in their mind. Okay, this is the one thing I'm going to do today. And also, because all of this data is collated in the Ed Analytics dashboard per user, you can really use this to encourage a blended learning approach. You can go in and say, okay, so Naomi, she said that she wanted to be more approachable with her team. She wanted to be more open and talkative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with her a week later. Okay, Naomi, you said you were going to try and be more open with your team. So how did that go? Alex, we can go through the list. Say Alex, he said he wanted to try and be more inspiring. So how did that go, Alex? And you can really follow through each of your employees, each of the survey responders, and see exactly what they said they were going to do to become a more transformational leader. So it's a great way to follow up in that blended learning kind of style, or even if you're not looking to follow up, well, it just gets them thinking about it anyway. We can also use it as a kind of more advanced test. So this would be great. Obviously we have test questions in Ed, and we can go through and say, okay, a learner can go through and they can say, okay, select what's an open question. And that's fantastic, and that's great for making sure, they understand that. But even sort of a harder question, I guess, is not having the answer there. It's having them say, okay, now you need to write out the difference. And without the prompt of the correct answer being on screen, it's a more difficult question. And the ability to explain concepts is something that's valuable as well as understanding it. So we can go through, and particularly this is really effective if you have perhaps a store manager looking over the employees of a store, and they can go through and look at the responses of each of their employees, and they can see, in that store who really understands how to use open questions, who really understands, your particular way of closing a sale, your sales strategy. And it's really effective for seeing those responses and identifying who, okay, they've passed the test, but what's their complete understanding of it? Can they explain it well? Can they apply it? So that kind of question really makes learners think. I would recommend using it towards the end of a course, to the end of a lesson, to really get them, get their brain working. And the final thing we're looking at is, again, it's kind of similar to the first step, but what we have here is the kind of survey that what we can do is when we're sending out people on sales calls, for example, we can say before every sales call, what you have to do is fill out this survey in Ed. So that survey will say, okay, what did you talk about to your client last time? What did you highlight, something you wanted to sell them this time? And perhaps the learner goes in and says, okay, last time we talked about reducing out of stocks. So in this call, I'm going to try and sell more of this product. Last time we looked at, I saw an opportunity in the front end to introduce more products there. So I'm going to try and close the deal on that. I'm going to try and improve our standing in the front end. And having everyone follow up with this plan every time, it really, it helps make more effective sales calls, because they're writing out their plan every time. They've got it in their mind. Okay, this is the one thing I'm going to do this time, and I'm going to achieve this. And again, because you are able to go in, look at the analytics and see who responded what, you can follow up with them and say, all right, so your plan here was to introduce some items to the front end. How did that go? Okay, you said here you identified some out of stocks last time. How did it go improving it? So that's just another way that Freetext survey format can be used, and then collating that information can be really effective in improving your employees' sales rates. So that was the end of the presentation. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you're as excited to include some Freetext survey templates in your lessons as I was when I heard about them. If you have any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them. But if there's no immediate questions, I'll wrap it up here and say thank you very much for attending, and I hope to hear from you again soon.